All right, so we're going to go ahead and jump right in. This is our agenda for today. We're going to be going over how to project incomes and expenses as a college student, how to keep track of your budgets, great ways to save as a student, increasing your income or that hustle. We're going to talk about the difference between fixed and variable incomes. And then we're going to go into life beyond school and how finance as a student and just in your personal life can really affect your financial trajectory over a long period of time. And then finally, at the very end, we'll have it just open time for more questions. Here we go. First things first is financial aid and the cost of attendance. This is a huge, huge piece of incomes and expenses for college students. And typically, for those of you who have already graduated from high school and applied to college, you probably already got something either in your email or in the actual mail, or if you have a student portal at the college you applied to, you probably see something that's called the financial award letter or the financial aid offer, something along those lines. Usually those will tell you what is the total cost of attendance. And usually it's an estimated cost because it'll estimate transportation fees, book fees, housing fees, etc. So what I'm showing here is actually a breakdown example. So this doesn't mean these are actual numbers for any given person. This is more of an example. But this is an example for an OSU student taking 13 credits, and it's broken down per term. So as many of you might know, Oregon State University has 3 terms during the school year. So it's divided up in 3 for that total tuition cost for the year. So there you'll see on step 1, what will I owe? It says tuition and fees, about $3,680. And then it has room and board, and then that total bill. And then underneath that, it has financial aid. So anything that the student might be receiving in financial support through like Pell Grants or Oregon Opportunity Grants or any scholarships. On this one, in this particular example, there weren't any private or outside scholarships, but you will see that it includes a federal subsidized loan. And we're going to talk about those a little bit later. And then at the very bottom, you see the total fee due for that term, plus the financial aid that they're receiving, including the loan. So we understand that loan is going to eventually have to be paid back, but for the time being, that's an income for the student. And then the balance at the very bottom of what remains to be paid. And that's the big question mark, is how do we bridge that gap? This is just a quick example, but there's a lot more to it than just the financial aid and cost of attendance. So we're going to dive into that next. It's really important for students to understand what their financial situation looks like. And the first thing they should really do is try to project and track their expenses. And this includes, like we previously showed, tuition, any other fees, books and materials that they might have to spend some money on, supplies, technology, and just have a total educational expenses category, right, like you see in this example. And then we see on another part of it, transportation expenses. This could include your vehicle, car insurance, parking fees, whether or not you're using public transportation and how much that's going to cost, going home to visit family for vacation, Thanksgiving, holidays, whatever, maybe just the weekend, or whether you're commuting from home to school, how much is that going to cost per month or per term? So you'll notice when I said expenses, you could go either way. Some students prefer to keep their finances tracked per month, and some prefer to break it down per term. And that's a personal preference for the person. Then there's also the general living expenses. So your housing, whether it be in the dorms or apartments, or you're renting a house, what is that monthly fee going to be? Whether or not you're paying for utilities, your phone, food, laundry, and then any other personal expenses. And this, you have to include everything. So anything we haven't already mentioned, you might want to put in there because this can include going out to a movie. I know we're in COVID time, so it might not be actually going out, but whatever other expenses you might consider would go in that area. And then you want to total up all your projected expenses to know what it really is going to cost for you to cover those needs or wants. And we're going to talk about that in a bit, the difference between needs and wants. So when we go into this example, you'll notice that there's a column that says want or need. The reason why that's useful is because a student can really identify what is it that I really have to make sure I cover the expenses of, and what is it where that I want to have, but I might have some wiggle room of paying more or less. And that could be like holiday expenses or outings, eating out, maybe cell phone, not really sure there, shopping, clothes and shoes. And then income. So it's also really helpful to track how much you expect to bring in during that month or term. And this includes grants, scholarships, even loans, and understanding that loans will eventually need to be paid back, but that for the time being is going to be considered an income. Any family support, any savings that you might have had dedicated specifically for your education or other expenses. And then income. It wasn't in this list that I found, but I wanted to include that in there because a student can also bring income of their own. And so that's why we put that in there. And then once you have that all listed, your total expenses and your total incomes, then you can really do the math and see whether or not you're going to be at a net positive or a net negative for the month, and whether or not you're going to have to work a little harder to piece things together for the month or the term, or if you're going to have a little left over to put in savings or towards your next term. So I'm going to hand it off to Lindsay.
As Jose was speaking about the needs and the wants, best thing about personal finances is that no matter your situation, whether you have leftover funds that you'll be able to spend with, or maybe in the negative, you're absolutely in control of all of your personal finances. It's the one thing you may not be in control of the circumstances if your income or your expenses go up or down, but you absolutely have every bit of control in figuring out a strategy for yourself by the term, by the month, by the week, even by the day. Really defining what those needs and wants are will really help you pivot on a dime, literally, if that's all you have in your pocket. We all know food is a very much a need. Shelter is a need. Transportation to get you to and from. There's so many various types of transportation and levels of expenses related to that. And then number 4, clothing. That is absolutely a need. And like we have noted down here, look good, feel good, do good. You know, you dress for the part, and helps you with first impressions. It helps you feel good about yourself and give you confidence. And so really sitting down and being honest with yourself, you know, and I'll be honest, my Starbucks coffee every other day is definitely a need for me. And it's fine. I just need to work it into my budget, but really sit down and define what's a need and what's a want, and really be honest with where you're going to be spending your money, and be very intentional about where you want to spend your money, because that's what you're going to be in control of.
Okay, so I'm going to cover part of this slide here about budget tracking. So there's many different ways that a student can keep track of their expenses and their incomes on a day-to-day basis, or on a weekly basis, and on a monthly basis. But it can be something as simple as just keeping track on a paper sheet, on a little notebook, where you track everything you spend and any income you might be getting. But it could also be on a spreadsheet in a digital form, or it could be on an app. So nowadays, most students are carrying a smart device on themselves, like a smartphone. And a really common app that's being used nowadays for budgeting and keeping track of personal finance is mint.com. I know that's one that I was taught when I was a college student, and I still use today. I'm not the best at tracking my expenses on it, but I have that ability. And there's other sites and apps that can be used depending on the student's preference. So that's definitely something to look into if you prefer that format. But then there's also the importance of keeping track of how you're going to spend money. And I'm going to let my colleague Lindsay talk a little bit more about that.
This was one of my my best tools when I was recalibrating my expenses and my revenue as I was going through my young adult years, and getting to where I'm at today. I never, ever, ever, and I stress to you, never, ever, ever go to a store, a grocery store, a bookstore. Don't go into a establishment where you're going to spend money without first going in with a plan and a list of exactly what you need and exactly what you want, and if you have the budget for both. Um, there has been some statistics out there. Don't quote me on the exact percentage. Last time I checked, if you go to a store without a well thought out plan and budget, you are more apt to spend 30% more than what you originally attended when you walked into the store. Also, little things like before you go shopping for groceries, make sure you have a nice lunch at home, because they also show statistically you will spend more money on food that you don't necessarily need just because you're hungry and it looks good when you're shopping in the store. So one of my best pieces of advice to you, if you're ever going to go shopping to get either school supplies, food, whatever you need, always, always plan it out, figure out exactly what your needs and wants are, how much money you have to work with, and then go into the store, get those items, and come right out.
Okay, so here we're going to talk about great ways to save, and we're talking from the perspective of a student coming into college. And so I'm going to go ahead and tell you guys a little bit more about dual enrollment. It sounds like we may have 2 students already on the call who are taking advantage of this way to save, which is really, really smart. So dual enrollment basically means that a student can be enrolled both at a community college and at a 4-year institution. And the advantage to that, and the reason why a student might want to do that, is because tuition is typically a lot less expensive at a community college than it would be at a 4-year university. And typically a student can take the majority of their first 2 years of credits at the community college at the lower rate. So that is a really, really smart way to save on tuition and still get the credits you're going to need to go towards your degree. You do have to be smart about which classes you take. So it's very important that you're meeting with an advisor and planning out what you're going to study and how you're going to take those classes and where they're going to transfer to. But it's a really great way to save money. All right, so we're going to go next into textbooks. And I know that was one of my favorite ways to save money while I was a college student, because I would normally see the high number of how much textbooks was going to cost me per term. And for those of you who might not know, it can be in the hundreds of dollars for just textbooks alone for each term. And so I would see the high number, and that's what my budget would include. But then I would try to save as much as possible, because I knew that money I saved there, I could put towards savings or actually other things that I might want. So that needs versus wants. I need my textbooks, but if I save money on that need, I might be able to use some of that money on my wants. So there's a lot of great ways to save on that, and it could be by purchasing used books, by renting books, by reselling your books, by borrowing books, or just by shopping around. So one of the things is you could buy directly from the university bookstore, or you can buy from another online vendor, or even just a physical bookstore. And it's really good to shop around to see who offers you the best deal. It's as simple as that. Some colleges do have a student book exchange program where students can actually sell and buy books with each other. And that tends to be more affordable for the student. And also the ability to sell your books to other students can bring some of that money back into your own pocket. So keep an eye out for those types of programs. And then last on this list is leisure and entertainment. And I included both there together because the amount of money people can spend on leisure and entertainment can vary wildly. It could be something as low as $5 to $10 a week to hundreds of dollars a week, depending on the lifestyle and type of leisure and entertainment that the person is into. That is something to definitely keep an eye on and really think proactively on. How do you want to spend your free time, and how much is that going to cost you? And is that something you can afford and build into your budget, or is that something that's going to break the bank?
There are a lot of college kids that are rowing in the same boat as you. As far as textbooks go, I mean, reach out to your social networks, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Anybody have a book for this class? If they don't want to sell it for cheap for the cost of them to go buy a pizza, you might offer to rent it from them for super cheap for the term. Same thing with leisure and entertainment. A lot of your friends that you're going to meet, not only a great way to meet friends, but they're all pretty much, like I said, rowing in the same boat with you financially. There's a lot of free stuff that you guys can go do, and it doesn't cost you a dime. Pool your money together with friends. You know, if everybody's wanting to get pizza, get 4 or 5 of your friends together and get a pizza. And then that way you're only spending $5 as opposed to $25 on a pizza for dinner one night. So really,
Yeah.
you know, reach out to your community of friends
Movie
and
night.
find out what they're doing, how they're doing it, and how if you guys can pool your resources together, you have a really great time.
I know a big one was having movie nights together in college rather than going out to the movies and each paying up to $10 per person. We just rent a movie for like $3 and just watch it together in someone's dorm or in some hallway. Yeah, it was always a good way to save money on a Friday night. All right, so another really great way to save is, and this was one that caught me off guard when I started college because I had never really tracked how much I was spending on food because I was living at home with my parents and they took care of that. But in college, I really had to pay more attention. And as a college student, if you're living on campus, you most likely have a dining plan. But even then, you have options. So most colleges offer different levels of meal plans. And so they could go from a pretty low, sort of inexpensive tier to a much more expensive tier. So keep in mind, how much do you actually need to spend on food and how much are you actually buying? It's really good to test that out your first term and just choose a food plan and see, oh no, I'm gonna need something higher by the end of the term, otherwise I'm gonna run out. Or I'm not spending nearly as much as I thought I was going to. And so maybe asking to reduce that plan to something lower. Keeping that in mind, when I was a college student, I had a meal plan and I had a place to go get food, but yet I was finding myself going out to other places and getting food. And that was not necessary for me to do, but I was just following my friends and going out to eat in other places. And that can really add up. I did the math and I don't remember if it was $70 a month extra that I was spending just for going out to eat. When I didn't really have to. So that was $70 I was spending extra that I could have saved just if I had kept to my meal plan. So that's something to keep in mind, how you're spending on your food habits and whether or not you need to increase that or reduce that. The other one is housing. And right here, I only show a graphic for one of the residence halls at Oregon State University. And this is actually from a year ago. So these rates might be a little outdated now. But here you can see a couple different options of the types of rooms that students can live in. And you'll see that the most affordable room is a triple, but that also implies that a student would be sharing the room with 2 other people. And so there you see what the total cost would be per year, and then also what it would be per term. And then you see all the way down to a large single room, which is nearly double of what it would be to be in a triple. And so you want to keep in mind what you can afford with your budget and whether or not you need to rethink your housing situation. And something that's not on here, but is definitely really important to consider is whether you would even be living on campus or off campus. There's a lot of options for off campus, whether it be living in an apartment or a shared duplex or even in Greek life, fraternities or sororities. Those are all options that could save you money. They tend to be less expensive than living on campus, but they also, living on campus also has its perks. And I just want to tap on Jeff. Jeff, are you still on the call?
I am, yeah.
So Jeff is my boss actually from Oregon State University. He, as a student, had lived on campus and also lived off campus in Greek life. So Jeff, can you share with folks what difference that makes in the student's finances?
Yeah, it can vary from fraternity to fraternity. There's also some campuses have co-ops, but for us, the um, the fraternity was quite a bit cheaper because we had well, we had a smaller house. But we also had an in-house cook, so meals were provided. So I think I don't want to date myself, but it was like $200 less per month to live in the fraternity than to live on campus with a meal plan.
All right. So then we come back to income. We talked about great ways to save, but now let's talk about how you could increase that cap for your budget. And so a really great way to do so as a student is to look for on-campus jobs. Large universities like Oregon State, PSU, U of O, they have a large variety of opportunities for students to work on campus. And it's a great way for students to get their foot in the door into a certain career path if they're interested in culinary, if they're interested in recreation, if they're interested in office administration. There's a lot of entry-level job opportunities that are really safe for students to grow and make mistakes. If they're going to make mistakes, that's a great opportunity to make them and learn from them at a low stakes environment. And a really good perk of working on campus is also that usually the people you're working with are very understanding of students' schedule, and they're typically pretty flexible to work around student schedules. I see we might have something in the chat. Okay. Okay, and the other thing is scholarships. Students can apply for scholarships every year. So students sometimes think that they can only apply for scholarships as they come into college, but that's not actually true. There's a cycle that repeats every year, and every fall is the kickoff to a new cycle for scholarships. And so a student can really keep their eye out for those and continue to try applying, whether it be through OSAC, institutional scholarships through their college, or private scholarships. Every year is a new opportunity to continue applying for those scholarships. The other thing is self-start entrepreneurship, and that could mean starting your own small business or just going out and finding things that you can do to bring an income for yourself. That it pretty much goes right in hand with the next thing on there, which is side jobs, weekend gigs, tutoring, babysitting, food delivery, yard work. Lindsay and I were talking as we were preparing it for this presentation about how really there's a lot of people who will go out and build work for themselves for an income just by finding a need in their community and trying to serve that need and just kickstarting something for themselves to create an income for themselves. I will say as a fun fact, just because I'm learning more and more about this, my younger brother is actually currently unemployed and live with my parents. But as a source of income, he was just telling me a couple days ago how he, during this, the COVID time, he started having a friendly competition with one of his friends on working through like Uber Eats and Instacart. And he was telling me he's averaging over $24 an hour just from working on food delivery. So he'll go pick up someone's grocery order and deliver that to their door, or even fast food. He said there's a lot of orders just for fast food and just deliver it to someone's door. And just with that alone, he's been able to make a pretty good income for a job that doesn't require a lot of skill. I mean, you just pick something up and deliver it. And he was telling me his friend is actually on track to reach about $8,000 for the month. So needless to say, his friend is beating my brother by a long shot, but it was like a thing he's documenting on TikTok. So it goes to show that there's so many different creative ways that students can really create an income for themselves on their own time.
So fixed versus variable income. My favorite actually to play around with is the variable income. Fixed is going to be your scholarships. It's going to be any kind of pledge support from mom and dad that's going to be coming in at a consistent basis. It's going to be more so like a campus-based job where you have a set amount of hours that are going to be allocated to you. and that you can depend on, that are always going to be there. You know, and then you'll have your variable income, and that's going to be what we were talking about a little bit before about what can you do to add to that fixed income. You already have your fixed expenses, you have your fixed income. There's a clash in the middle, and you're going to need to make a little bit more money on those side hustles. That variable income is really your playground, and that's where you're going to be able to do things such like Jose was talking about. Get into the food delivery business on the side. You can do that during different hours in the afternoon after school or on weekends. Another thing I'll tell you is, as a mother of a young son that's in elementary school, you know, never ever waste a crisis. There is going to be a lot of families this fall that will pay you really, really good money if you can help their son or daughter with some math homework in the evenings as they start navigating this new dual hybrid in-person online sort of world for their kids of schooling when elementary school and middle school starts back up again this fall, even high school. Families are going to be looking for students such as yourselves that might be able to step in and fill that need as they're trying to work and balance home and work themselves. They're going to be willing to pay good money for you to come in and help their children with some little extra tutoring, or just as an accountability partner to sit with the kids and make sure that work one-on-one with them remotely to make sure they get their homework done. It's going to be a huge, huge opportunity for you to keep on your horizons. But you know, you really want to be able to identify your fixed income versus your fixed expenses. Those are the things. Fixed means it doesn't change very much. It's pretty steady Eddie. Your variable is going to be your variable income, your variable expenses. Those are the ones that can go up and down. Those are the ones that you need to really focus and have a plan on for how you want, what direction you want them to go. You want to be your variable expenses to push way down. You want your variable income to go way up. And that gives you a lot more freedom and a lot more, a lot more fun. You know, if you can get those two, your expenses down, your income up, you have a lot more opportunity for yourself. From the college perspective there, or university perspective, Jose, do you have something you want to add?
No, from the university perspective, it's if you have an on-campus job, typically you have a fixed income unless your hours may vary. So if you have a part-time job as a student, if for some reason your hours vary from week to week, then that might be considered a variable income. But typically they're pretty fixed. It's something you can count on. Yeah, so that tends to be the majority of on-campus jobs.
Okay, life beyond school. This is my part. So, kind of give you a little background where I started out in life at your age. I really stepped into the adult world. I had a food stamp card in one hand and I had a baby on my hip on the other. So I had to really right out of the box figure out, what my goals were, where I wanted to land when I was an adult, when I was all grown up, and then really develop a plan of how I was going to get there. And it's no different than where you're standing right now. You're deciding what your career goal is going to be. What do you want your adult life to be? Do you want to have a house? Do you want to have toys? Do you want to have an RV? Do you want to travel? All these things you need to be thinking about and planning about now. One thing that I learned really quickly, right, and unfortunately my parents taught me very well, that number one, know what a credit score is and know what your credit score is. Be very, very protective of your credit score. My family had not a whole lot of money when I was growing up. However, my mom was very protective of their credit score. You can have zero money in your bank account. And if you have a good credit score, you have a world of opportunity available to you when you're an adult. If you make mistakes with your credit score and with misuse of credit, one slip up, one mistake will stay on your credit report for 7 years. So if you're 20 years old and you make a mistake on your credit, then it'll be 27 before you'll be 27 years old before that falls off your credit report. So be very, very protective of your credit score. That's something that will afford you all the opportunities that you will need as an adult. And it also, if you don't protect it now and you're not responsible with protecting your score, it can close a lot of doors for you until you're well into your 30s and 40s if you're not responsible about watching your credit score. Managing that debt, making sure that you really identify those wants and needs, making sure that whatever you're taking on is not just an impulsive, oh man, I really want that car. Oh man, I can afford it. I can afford it. I'll eat top ramen. I want to borrow this or borrow that from the bank. I can afford the payments because, you may be borrowing $10,000, but really what you're looking at is, oh wow, my payment might be only, $50 a month. Well, that's not ideal. You're still owing $10,000. Anything could happen. And that goes right back to the credit score. If you make a mistake, it follows you for 7 years. Be super, super protective of that. If you take one thing away from me today, protect that credit score. Be wise about it. Learn how to build your credit score and run with it. Future home mortgage, vehicle loans, all of that can be, you saw my son in the background, he's checking in on me. All of those things, you need to be thinking about now. For instance, like I said, I started out on food stamps and with baby on my hip, and I really wanted to own my own home. It took a lot of being strategic and being intentional about how I spent my money, how I saved my money, but most importantly, how I protected that credit score until I was able to save just a small amount for a down payment. The bank trusted me as a single mom with that credit score that they were going to go ahead and give me the money for my first house. And then I decided to take a step further, and I was going to decide I really want to pay off that house before I turned 40 years old. And I worked really, really hard. I hustled. I did all those side jobs that we were talking about. And I'm very proud to say that before the age of 40, I didn't just own and have my first house paid off, but I owned 2 homes, and both are paid off before I turned 40. And you can do it too. You just have to protect your score, be really smart with your money. You're only in control of your money and your destiny on that. Be strategic about how you save and spend your money. Really define what you want your goals to be as an adult, because what you're doing now is going to have an impact. Education, how you spend your money, all of that is going to have an impact on what your life is going to be as an adult. And then really set those goals, and really those big goals, what you want to be when you grow up. Where do you see yourself financially when you grow up? And then really develop a path of how you're going to get there. Visualize it, do it. Again, never go to a store without a list in your hand. Every single dollar that comes through your pocket or your hand, be very responsible with it. Be intentional about it. Be smart about it. What you're doing today as an adult, a young adult, is really going to define your success as an old lady like me.